Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Only Podcast. My name is Chris Vanini. I'm your host. It's been a few weeks since we got one of these but due to some various scheduling issues, we weren't able to. But now we're back just in time for the snowed out game, the rescheduled snowed out basketball game, and then the Michigan basketball game. We got a full house here tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. I'm joined by KJ, Joe Toohey, and Jeremy Dewar. Should be a fun time here. How are you guys doing? I guess we'll start with KJ. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm not on the East Coast.
Where are you at? Oh, I gotcha. No, I misunderstood what you were saying. We're always not on the East Coast.
Right.
Yes. Jeremy, how you doing? Your first time on this.
Yeah, making my debut. Doing pretty good. Not too bad in Grand Rapids, just really cold, but better than being in New Hampshire right now. So
we'll talk some hockey. We'll get some hockey in this. And Joe, how you doing?
Doing well. Looking forward to a couple games here at the end of the week. I'm glad that we got some extra hashtag excuses for Sunday. So.
Oh, there are so many, and we will get into those. I think last time Joe and I were here, we were wrapping up the Cotton Bowl and everything, and what was next for football. Not much has gone on in the world of football since then, although Trey Waynes has left, and Connor Cook and Shilly Calhoun have decided to return, so MSU has an interesting outlook toward next season. Nothing's really changed, and once we kind of get towards spring ball, we'll probably talk about that more. But this is basketball, because this is a hashtag basketball school. And the last time we saw this basketball team, things were pretty ugly for quite a while. The Spartans lost 79-77 at Nebraska. They were getting run out of the building in the second half, but managed to claw back in it, but not quite enough. A lot of things went wrong, notably 15 for 25 at the free throw line, 60%, continuing a season-long trend of bad free throw shooting, arguably costing them a number of games. And you could argue that free throws may have cost them the Nebraska game based on that final score. But before we get into Rutgers and what's next, KJ, what are you looking at with this team right now? They're sitting at 13-7, 4-3 in the Big Ten. They seem to be in the tournament right now, but more of these, losses that they shouldn't have, and things are not trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, from the beginning, I think it was a little more pessimistic on this team at the beginning than some other observers. And, for me, it's all about making the tournament, extending Izzo's streak. It was pretty clear this team was not going to be a top four seed and make a run at a Final Four. So from that perspective, I'm not totally flabbergasted at where we stand. It's a little disappointing in light of how well they played against Indiana and Iowa. That two-game stretch made it feel like maybe they were actually going to make a run toward the top of the conference. But I think I'm less in panic mode, but one more bad loss, and then I think it's full-on panic mode, and the team is clearly on the bubble for the tournament, and so we'll see. Obviously it's a relatively easy stretch here. KenPom has us favored in the next 8, so you win, say, 6 of those 8, and then I think everybody can breathe a little easier.
Yeah, I think they were favored in not too long ago. They were favored in every single remaining game except for Wisconsin. Now the Indiana game they're no longer favored in. Which, looking back, a 20-point win over an Indiana team that is looking pretty good. That might be MSU's signature win of the year. If they hadn't made that wild comeback at Iowa, who knows where this team would be at right now. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I think we're sort of in a holding pattern right now, right? In terms of the DEFCON or BubbleCon system that Spartan Dam has also co-opted, I think we're sort of right there still. We're at 4, and I think KJ's right. Another bad loss puts us down at 3. I know that there are some brackets that have us in that last 4 in grouping. I'm not so concerned about that. I think one of the really interesting things about this Big Ten season is generally how weak the Big Ten has been compared to previous years.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, and I still think that there's sort of this, I've said it before, flabby lower middle of the Big Ten, which makes sense because it's the Big Ten anyways. But, there's teams like Rutgers, like Nebraska, like Michigan, right? I mean, we don't get to play Nebraska again, but that where these wins should be able to get piled up pretty well. If we got to 10-8, 11-7, which 11-7 is the KenPom projection at this point, I think, that's definitely a tournament team. So, I don't know. Do you guys think Nebraska was a bad loss? I'm not sure. I think it's sort of on the edge.
I think given they were out pretty much 2 starters when Pitchford went out, I think it was. And then you look at what Nebraska did tonight against Michigan, laying a major egg against a team that's decimated with injuries. And MSU, they lose to Nebraska. They struggled to beat Penn State. They struggled to beat Northwestern, both at home. Other than that blowout win over Indiana, really nothing has come easy. And the Big Ten is so weird because you had Northwestern nearly winning at Maryland the other night, and it's literally Wisconsin and everybody else in the rest of the conference. And from the very bottom, from number 14 can beat number 2. It's remarkable, and Wisconsin lost at Rutgers, which is where MSU goes next. So, really anything can happen. Jeremy, what have your impressions been of just the Big Ten and where MSU kind of fits into that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing looking back, and you see coming into it, Wisconsin, like you said, was going to run away with it. But looking back now and seeing that Maryland's kind of separated onto like a second tier there, I knew there was going to be a drop-off, and I'm not the biggest Denzel Valentine fan, so I was pretty worried coming into the season, but I did not expect as much of a drop-off as I've seen where, like you said, I started that Nebraska game thinking there's no chance we lose, and to come out and, get ran for the whole first half almost. I turned it off pretty much and saw that we only lost by 2 after that, but yeah, it's not looking good, but I guess the tournament is probably not a bad goal to have to continue the streak and everything. So,
KG, what do you look at when you kind of try to figure out what exactly is the problem here? It's kind of a multitude of things, but what do you think is the biggest problem?
Well, I think fundamentally, and the concern coming into the season was that you don't have that go-to guy on offense, and Travis Trice, frankly, is probably substantially exceeded expectations as kind of an offensive leader and a spark plug. But again, he's got certain limitations in terms of what he can do attacking the basket. I just think you look at Trice, Valentine, and Dawson. Trice is a role player playing very well as a senior. Valentine's a glue guy trying to be a number 2 scoring option on the perimeter. And Dawson, you can argue he's got the talent to do more offensively than he's done, but, we're in our 4th year, and he obviously is what he is on offense, and Izzo seems pretty happy with his effort level, so it's not a matter of focus the way perhaps it's been in the past. So I just think these guys are all playing up a notch in terms of their roles on this team, and it's not a complete surprise that they're a little more erratic. I think the defensive lapses the last few games are probably more concerning, given that this team did look like it had the makings of being a pretty solid defensive team with Dawson and Costello up front, some depth when everybody's healthy on the perimeter, and they played some pretty good lockdown defense for a stretch there early in the Big Ten season, and that seems to be have evaded us the last few games. So I think that's probably the number one concern going forward is can they refine that defensive rhythm? Yeah,
they gave up 39 first half points to Nebraska, which has a really, really poor defense. I forgot what they were in KenPom, but they're number 265 in adjusted offense. They put up 39 points on MSU in the first half, which was pretty, remarkable. And you had some strange things happening, like Ty Webster going 2 for 2 from deep when he was shooting, I think, like 5 for 30 something on the season. You had Nebraska just driving and getting to the free throw line, and you had nobody who could stop the ball from getting to the hoop without causing a foul. And kind of wondered if you look at what Nebraska, if anybody watched the Michigan-Nebraska game tonight, Nebraska had absolutely no clue whatsoever to do, no clue what to do against Michigan's zone defense. And I know Izzo said this week he might look at zone, which is like a thing he says every single year and never ever happens because it's Izzo. But you look at when you give up 39 points and a half to Nebraska, and you have to wonder, if you had played some zone, would it have worked? I don't expect it to change. It's Izzo, they do what they do, but they have had some strange defensive lapses against some unlikely opponents this year, Joe.
Yeah, I think in terms of just the eye test, I haven't seen any particular culprits either. I don't think it's anyone in particular. But yeah, I mean, in the last 4 games, right, they gave up 1.2 points per possession to Northwestern, which is a surprise. They gave up 1.22 points per possession to Maryland, which was not totally unexpected, but Maryland had primarily been playing very good defense up until that point in conference play. Gave up 1.05 to Penn State at home, and then gave up 1.14 points per possession to Nebraska. I mean, these are numbers that are really unusual, and yeah, I mean, we're not going to see any zone played. I just can't imagine that that's the case. But I mean, when you have, and this is something that happened with Adrian Payne, for instance, when you have guys who are trying to take on additional offensive load that they're not used to taking on, you can often see that reflected in a downturn in their defensive ability or their ability to expend energy on the defensive end. So when you have guys, and I've been a fan of Denzel Valentine this year. I'm gonna disagree with Jeremy there. He's taken on a significantly larger role in terms of the number of possessions he uses, and he's actually increased his efficiency as well. He still makes dumb plays. I mean, there's that one play against Penn State where, in the middle of a run, he stepped out of bounds, and it's, there are a couple things. Or that 5-second call that he took against Penn State as well. But I really think that that could be an explanation for the defensive lapse we're starting to see is over the course of a season, guys trying to take on larger roles than maybe they're used to. I mean, that's maybe something that we can point to, but
yeah, Valentine's his numbers are better than I think his play looks. I mean, I'll give him that. He's shooting 42% from deep, which is second on the team to Forbes. He's shooting 48% on twos, 85% of the free throw line. Assist rate is decent. The problem is the turnover rate's still pretty high, which has always kind of been a problem with him. But he's rebounding decently on the defensive end. He was a big part of that run against Nebraska with some offensive boards, but it just kind of looks, I don't know, it just kind of looks sloppy, and the bad plays kind of overshadow a lot of the good ones. But he has been a lot better shooter this year than I think maybe he's been given credit for. Now, let's talk about a couple of topics here that are always fun to talk about with Izzo teams. One is the auto bench, and that came into play against Nebraska. If you have 2 fouls in the first half, you're sitting no matter what. And you end up getting Colby Wallenman playing significant minutes in the first half against Nebraska, and you end up giving up 39 points and finding yourself down 14 at halftime. You look at Costello and Schilling, they've really had a problem staying in foul trouble. Schilling's committing 5.5 fouls per 40. Costello's 4.8 per 40. But along with the auto bench is a lack of Marvin Clark when they do get in there. That's been kind of surprising because he's kind of seemed to make plays whenever he's in the game. His usage rate is actually higher than Costello, Schilling, or Bryn Forbes for that matter. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the auto bench? It's not something only Izzo does. A lot of teams do it, but what do you think about the auto bench and kind of how it plays into that, along with the lack of Marvin Clark, who seems to be in Izzo's doghouse a little bit, just based on how he's getting passed on the rotation by a former walk-on.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that's always one of the more frustrating things, I guess, of an Izzo team, especially as someone that's never playing basketball, never really knowing the strategy per se. But yeah, it seems like this year is the wrong year to make the two-foul thing have to happen every time when you have to go to Wallman, like you talked about. If there was any year to possibly let the big guys work it out and figure it out, this seems like the year to do it. And yeah, I mean, Marvin Clark, I mean, I'm with you on really wish they used him a lot more. I was also really confused on benching Javon Bess as early as they did Saturday against Nebraska. You know, he got out, had the 5 points quick, and I understand his legs probably aren't there as a freshman, but that was kind of a frustrating benching as well, because I thought he looked great in those first few minutes, was the best player on the floor. And then once they sat him, they kind of slowed down for a few minutes. So,
KJ, what do you think about auto bench and Clark?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as anti-auto bench as some of my brethren, my stats-oriented brethren. But I think you got to look at the situation. If it's a close game, you know, then I can see playing Wallenman, trying to keep it close, not putting yourself in a position where, you know, you got to play Wallenman in the second half. But, you know, when you're getting run off the court, I think you got to adjust your strategy a little bit.
Yeah, they were down by 2 when Costello went out, or when Schilling went out, and that put them both out. And after Wallenman came in, I think Nebraska finished the half on like a 14-point edge type of run.
Right. I think Izzo's still adjusting to the fact that Schilling has actually got his foul rate down. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's still 5.5, but it's down from whatever it was, like 7 or 8.
Right, but so I mean, part of what you're talking about here, though, is neither of those guys is playing 40 minutes, right? I mean, so their foul rates of 4.8 and 5.5 per 40 should be adjusted in your head, right? Because ideally, neither of them is playing more than 25 minutes in a game. So in that case, right, I mean, if that's an average, you figure that strategy actually changes for opponents at a certain point where they end up going down low more often. But especially in this game against Nebraska, to me, it felt like there were 2 things that happened that I thought were interesting when it came to the auto bench strategy. One is that they went to a much smaller lineup, which was effective, where Dawson was playing the 5 for a little bit of time there. It seemed like they had there was Bess, Clark, and Dawson in the game all at once, and I really liked that because at least Bess and Clark can spread the floor a little bit, and then at the 5, Dawson can rebound in such a way that doesn't put you totally, in trouble there, especially when Nebraska had no low post scoring that you had to be concerned about. So I'd like to see that more, actually. And then the other thing is, I think, how many times have either of those guys actually fouled out? So I don't think that the strategy is super sound. I guess, yeah, I'm more of the anti-auto bench.
Two of the situations that came up were the Iowa game and the Nebraska game. Both cases, after they did it, the home team went on a major run and put MSU in a major hole, which would be, a way to, be against it. At the same time, in both of those games, the team had monster second halves when they did come back and everybody was playing well. So maybe it is good, but then is it better to be able to make a comeback or not get yourself down in a hole in the first place while you're risking it? It's tough, and I know with the big guys and their propensity to draw fouls, I can at least understand it. But in situations when you're starting to kind of get run out of the building, I haven't been a proponent of doing that. And KJ, you've been a big fan of Javon Bess in the recent weeks. His numbers all around are really solid. He still doesn't get a ton of playing time. He's kind of, he's a freshman, kind of getting into things. Him and Bryn Forbes, who has the highest offensive rating on the team, is actually 8th in usage. It's been really strange to see him in the offense this year because he came in as a 3-point guy, but he could also score in different ways. but this year he seems to almost only be a 3-point guy, and he's never doesn't feel like he's being used as a focal part of the offense, and it's something that Izzo's talked about in recent weeks. With Forbes, with Best, what are there different players you'd like to see get more involved in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, the Forbes thing, Joe and I were actually talking about this offline, that's a little bit a player adjusting to Izzo's system. You know, Izzo doesn't want his guards freelancing too much, so you're kind of seeing the same thing you saw with Brandon Wood when he transferred in, that his usage rate, he was very efficient. He probably adapted more quickly defensively than Forbes has. But he didn't take a lot of shots either because, Izzo doesn't really want his guards taking a lot of shots until they kind of learn the offense. And so, there's probably a little bit of an overcompensation there. And Forbes still seems to me like he's passing up a few shots where he's probably got the space to take the shot.
It feels like he's only taking threes. It feels like he's not even looking to drive, take it in, kind of maybe freelance a little bit. It feels like anytime he gets the ball, it's pretty much in a position to shoot a three-pointer. He's taken 87 threes and 39 twos on the year, but I don't know what that is in Big Ten play. I'd be curious to see what that was. But, yeah.
Well, another interesting thing that's happened, and this is sort of tangential to what we were talking about a second ago, but an interesting thing that's happened is that MSU is now last in the Big Ten in terms of three-pointers attempted per field goal attempt. And so that's been a really interesting development, I think, because I think it's been sort of another overcompensation. I take that back. They're now at 13th, 13 of 14, right? But that's been an overcompensation, I think, since the Texas Southern game, where it seemed like, at the beginning of the season we're saying live by the three, die by the three, and now Izzo has attempted to sort of sway back away from that. I think some of that has to do with opponents' defensive strategy. You definitely saw that against Maryland.
Maryland, they absolutely they dared MSU to drive, and they couldn't do it. I'm curious also. While they aren't taking as many threes as they did, it still feels like game to game they're either, it kind of speaks to the variance of three-point shooting, but they're either incredibly on or they're incredibly off. So while they may not be, living and dying by the three-point line ends up playing a major factor in how they do offensively.
Right. Shooting in general is important, right? So even when you're only taking only 28% of your field goals attempted are threes, that's still a quarter of all shots that you've taken. So yeah, of course that's true. I'd actually like to see him take more threes. I think that it would be preferable if they got Marvin Clark on the floor a little more often. I'd really actually like to see that, especially when at this point, you're not beating bad teams by large margins anyways. You might as well adopt a slightly higher variance strategy so that when you do play a team like Wisconsin or Indiana on the road or Ohio State at home, you have a little bit better chance of pulling what might be considered an upset in some of these games. So
on Clark, I think maybe it's part of the reason he hasn't played as much, but he's eighth on the team in minutes percentage, and he's fourth in usage. So when he's on the floor, he's getting himself involved, and I know he takes a lot of shots maybe that Izzo doesn't like, but it's a confidence that I don't think we're seeing from a lot of players either, for what that's worth.
Right. It's the inverse.
And for whatever reason, obviously it's small sample size because he hasn't been playing a lot, but Clark hasn't made a three-pointer in about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, he was hitting a lot early against weaker competition, or for whatever reason, he's missed his last 9 attempts over about 11 games. So,
and he's been decent at the free throw line. He's 19 for 26 in the year, which is actually second on the team. Not a big sample size there, but if they could get him working in the paint more and get to the line, he can make the free throws. So yeah, Rutgers this week. Rutgers on, I believe it's Thursday now, and then Sunday with Michigan are the next two, and then they have a week off until Illinois. Rutgers, Ken Pom gives them a 78% chance with a 7-point win, and Michigan's a 84% chance. But Michigan's been looking, pretty good ever since LeVert went out. Beeline continues to work his magic there. Rutgers, they lost to the Michigan team right out of the bat without LeVert, but they also beat Wisconsin, and it's a road game where you kind of never know really what can happen. KJ, what are you kind of looking at in these two games here? How do you think things are going to kind of play out for MSU?
Yeah, the Rutgers game is a bit of a wild card. I can't purport to be super knowledgeable about what makes Rutgers tick. They look like they're a defensive-oriented team.
Yeah, their offensive numbers are really ugly. The defense is okay.
So the paranoid side of my brain worries, that MSU can't score against a decent defense, and Rutgers goes off from 3-point range. Michigan's worrisome, I think, just in terms of they're playing a lot more zone defense. If you saw the post that was up at U of M Hoops today, looking at how much zone they've been playing lately, particularly the 2-3 zone, and how effective that's been. So that is one area where perhaps we'll have if we do lose Sunday, the excuse thing might actually have a little bit of validity in terms of Izzo having a short turnaround to prepare the team to play against the zone. But again, a 2-3 zone isn't exactly the most exotic thing, and MSU seems like they ought to be, if they're good at anything on offense in the half court, it should be against the zone.
And the 3-point shooting.
All they can do is pass and shoot. So
right, yeah,
right. And I would also say that having played against zones earlier in the year, it did seem like the strategy was better than in some previous years. It seemed like against Eastern, for instance, they did actually a pretty decent job. Although looking back, it was fewer than 1 point per possession, but it did seem like when Denzel Valentine sort of was the one in the middle of that zone, sort of in the high post area, that sort of unlocked things. Dawson doesn't have the passing ability that Valentine does, so in that area at least. So yeah, that zone could be troublesome, but yeah, the one nugget about Rutgers that I've got here is that they're one of two teams that actually has shot worse from the free throw line than MSU has in Big Ten play thus far. So.
Yeah. One thing about MSU, they're bad at the free throw line, but their free throw defense has been pretty good too. They're doing a good job of distracting opponents, I guess, because opponents are number 294 in making free throws against MSU.
Yeah,
but that's all about the zone, baby.
Although that's
the inverse. So Chris, you've got that a little backwards. Like that means that MSU's done a bad job against opponents. That opponents are shooting very well.
Oh, right, I read that wrong. No, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, you're right. Opponents
in that case, fire the zone.
Yeah, and you look at Nebraska. They went 29 for 37, 78% against MSU, and almost throughout. While MSU was trying to make that comeback the other day, they kept making 2 free throws every time and making it as difficult as possible for MSU. So yeah, opponents are making a lot of their free throws against MSU, while MSU is missing a lot. I'm curious to see the difference there. MSU's making 63%. Opponents are making 71%, almost 72%. It's almost a difference of 9%. I'm curious where that would rank nationally in terms of difference. And actually, to go back to a point, Jeremy, I was telling you they seem to either make all their threes or miss all their threes. They have not made 40-something% of their threes, meaning higher than 40, lower than 50, since Ryder on November 27th. They're either in the high 50s or higher, or they're in the mid to low 30s. So it's been kind of really hit or miss from the 3-point line. The last in Big Ten play, this is what they've gone. They've gone 33%, 70%, 27%, 17%, 30%, and 34%. So it's kind of really been hit or miss there. Jeremy, looking at Rutgers and Michigan, these are two games that MSU's kind of favored pretty heavily in, but I don't think any MSU fans would feel comfortable about either one of them. How do you think things are going to be playing out?
Yeah, I'm definitely pretty comfortable with Rutgers, I felt like, but you never know when you do the whole messing up someone's schedule, getting ready to play Tuesday, then delaying it to Thursday, how that kind of can just throw people off. Like KJ said, not going to really purport to be an expert on Rutgers besides, knowing that they beat Wisconsin in a pretty ugly game earlier in the year without Kaminsky in there. But the Michigan game, I want to be confident, but I saw something on Twitter that was pretty good about the with LeVert and Walton being out. Maybe they're doing the double Ewing theory right now, where they can lose two and they somehow have a double Ewing theory working down there. But I'm so afraid of the zone from just watching MSU games in the past. Even though it does seem to fit our team better this year, though, with not really looking to drive, just kind of kick it out if they can hit their threes. Would like to be confident in that game, but yeah, it should be 2 wins, but it probably won't be as easy as it should be, just like Penn State was earlier last week. So
yeah, the storylines going into this game are interesting because you feel bad for guys like LeVert who are missing out on the whole year. By all accounts, is a great kid. He's doing a great job. But on the heels of what happened last year with MSU and the hashtag excuses meme that we all had fun with, and to see Michigan in the exact same position now, it's just, I don't even know what to call it. It's just an odd situation. And then people figure on the other side, Izzo's ready to go, make an excuse about the quick turnaround from Rutgers to Michigan if things don't go well there. You can look at it anyway, but the fans, both fan bases have been pretty pessimistic about both their teams this year, and it's led to more complaining about the other fan bases complaining, and that never-ending cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely do some complaining between now and then. Mostly directed at Alex Cook, probably, but yeah, I mean, and I live in Ann Arbor, so that's like complaints constantly. So
you have a right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for all the harassment I got after Harbaugh got hired, at least nobody called me stupid in my own home, so that was nice.
So we'll talk about hockey in a minute here. Do you guys have any other comments?
My closing comment is something I've been thinking about this week, is that, as frustrating as this team's performance can be at times, I really like this team. I mean, it's clearly a team, to me, that's playing hard. They've got lapses like almost every college basketball team does within a game. But, at this point in conference play, they're first in the league in offensive rebounding percentage. They're second in the league. And I got that backwards. They're first in the league in defensive rebounding percentage, second in the league in offensive rebounding percentage. I mean, that's clearly a team scraping by. Like I said at the beginning, you got some players kind of playing above their level in terms of what they're trying to do to carry this team. So I kind of like a rebuilding year every once in a while. We don't have very many of those as MSU fans, which is a good thing. But as long as we make the tournament, I'll add that caveat. I think this is kind of a fun season.
Yeah, I've seen some people, when MSU not getting to the free throw line and shooting a lot of threes is nothing new. But the difference is those past teams, had star quality players, and you don't get the sense this year that, the team's not, quite simply, giving it their all. They're just simply not, talented enough to hang with, to consistently hang with the best. It's just kind of where they are. The result of a number of recruiting misses by Izzo and, Gary Harris leaving early, which was, bound to happen. But they're kind of, they're like you said, just kind of giving it everything they have. Sometimes it looks really, really good, and sometimes it looks really, really bad. And I think that's kind of just a result of the type of just team that had been put together quality-wise.
Yeah, and once you doubt Tom Izzo is usually when something good happens. So
yeah, hockey had a really good weekend. They swept Ohio State at home. I think the first game was 4-1, and the second one 1-0. I think that was. Jeremy's our resident hockey guy. If you're not reading his stuff on the site, you should, because we got Big Ten hockey now, and Spartans are actually doing pretty well this year. Jeremy, what for those who haven't been following the hockey team, how would you kind of sum up how the year's gone so far?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the record, it's probably pretty close to last year. I think last year at this time they might have been right around 7 or 8 wins, and we're at 9-11 right now. But if you just watch the games or even just kind of stat watch, it's a lot different team this year. Last year they'd hang in the games, losing 2-1, but be outshot by 20 or 25 by teams like a Minnesota or a Wisconsin. But this year they're most of the nights they're actually winning the shot battle. They're still snake bitten offensively. They're still one of the lower teams in the country as far as putting pucks in the net. But much different team than last year. They're sitting at third in the Big Ten right now, just one game back of Penn State.
Big Ten's been crazy this year.
Yeah,
Wisconsin is brutal, and they've been a national contender for years. And then you've got Minnesota. They might be in 5th place or 4th place. They're in the bottom half, and they're always one of the most talented teams in the country. And then Penn State, just a few years removed from being a club team, was in 1st place for a while, and now they're in 2nd place, doing a pretty good job. Been a weird year.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin actually came out today that there's a petition to get Mike Eaves fired by a former player, so that's always a good season when you've got that going on. So
nice.
They won the national championship, what, 08, 09 or something like that? Or
yeah, it was not too long ago. I think it was 06. It was in Milwaukee that they won it. But yeah, it's been a pretty weird year. Penn State, I mean, it's a little surprising, but the thing is right now we've only got out of the Big Ten one team that looks like it's going to get in. Michigan just this week crept into being an at-large team. It was up until last week looking like the only team to get in was going to be the tournament winner.
Wow.
And the thing coming down the stretch is, the thing with Michigan right now is none of the wins they're going to get are going to be quality, unless it's maybe Minnesota. So they're at the point right now where they have to almost win every game. And if they take a loss to like an MSU this weekend, it'll drop them probably back out of the tournament just because of where MSU is RPI. So we're looking at maybe one, and if something comes crazy down the year, 2 teams getting in. But it's the Big Ten's probably going to put in only one team this year, so pretty crazy year. So
yeah, and I mean, Michigan would have made the tournament last year if they could just figure out how to beat Penn State. That was so weird. When Penn State I think they were last place last year, and they beat Michigan 3 times, including in the tournament. That was crazy. So I know, it's a double rivalry week, because I know they've got the game. Is their only game this week against Michigan at the Joe?
Yep, yeah, they have only 2 games the next 2 weeks. They're doing the Joe this Saturday, and a week from this Saturday is when they go down and play the Soldier Field game against Michigan again. And they'll be playing a doubleheader at Soldier Field against Wisconsin and Miami for the early game. So
I know they did that recently at Soldier Field. I know they had Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then Miami, Notre Dame. And the crowd was like decent, but you have to imagine a lot of that was Minnesota and Wisconsin fans.
Yeah.
Is this going to be, really ugly as I expect in terms of crowd?
Yeah, I
can't see anybody showing up for this.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do the whole, there's Big Ten fan bases in the area. But yeah, I don't think it's probably going to be much more than, I wouldn't guess more than, 15 to 20,000 if you're lucky. And that's probably doing both games combined. So yeah, I don't know. Apparently they must like to host it because they've done it more than 1 year. But
it was Michigan that gave up the home game for this, right?
Yeah, it's Michigan giving up the home game, but I think it actually evens out because it's State technically has one of their home games being the Joe, like they usually do, every year where one team has a home game.
Yeah, usually one team gets 2. So it's kind of a parting gift there from Dave Brandon, I guess.
Michigan.
I miss him so much already.
Yeah.
What
Well,
do
hey,
you-
at least we win the Jersey game no matter what. So
I was gonna say, what do you think about the jerseys? I know both teams got jerseys. Michigan's got kind of a throwback. MSU's got pretty much a carbon copy of the Football Pro Combats. It's
yeah, like
at least MSU's got one. The fact that they didn't have any for the Big Chill was kind of a letdown. But what do you think of the jerseys?
I like the jerseys. The only thing if I could change one thing, I don't like the Spartan nameplate on the back, but I know that's pretty much just trying to match the football program.
Are they
too.
going to
The
do that,
football
or
ones
was
have
that
them,
just
too.
a filler?
See, I would feel like that they wouldn't do that as just a filler, but it will be interesting to see if they do change that. The only other thing I had was they showed in the pictures Ferentino as the captain, and I'm thinking it's just going to be the captain's jerseys that have this issue, but it's pretty busy because there's 5 patches on the front between the Big Ten, Nike, and the Soldier Field game, and there's the captain. So
Do we know what the
It's,
helmets are going to be? Have they shown? Are they going to be the regular green, or is it going to be bronze?
I'm hoping it's green.
Because the football went with bronze, so I was just curious. I'm surprised that I imagine if they were going to, they would have showed it. I guess.
Yeah, I would imagine they probably would have had Ferentino have it in his hand or on his stick or something. If
Maybe they didn't show it.
bronze,
Maybe because it's a Nike thing and Nike doesn't have the helmets. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. I don't know. Nike doesn't have the football helmets though, so I don't know.
But I mean, if you look at Notre Dame's hockey helmets, they're so brutal because it's not a shiny material like a football helmet. So any team that tries to, the only team I think has ever pulled off the hockey football helmet look is maybe Penn State, because they're just pretty similar. But even like Michigan's wings or Notre Dame's bronze or the Ohio State helmets just look brutal trying to do on hockey plastic a football helmet. So hopefully they stick with the green, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nike put them in a bronze helmet, because Nike does, I think it's CCM that they're a part of, that they use hockey. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up putting them in a Nike bronze helmet for the night.
Hey, Joe or KJ, have you seen the new hockey jerseys for this?
I just looked them up, and one thing that we're forgetting about here is that they had a basketball one that was similar with the Spartans on the back. Yeah, it's of course, the name of the blog, right? The only colors are now black and bronze. So
right at this point, whatever the kids want, the kids can have. I'm done being the grumpy old man about this.
I showed this on Twitter. You know who has awesome hockey jerseys? Is the MSU roller hockey team. I tweeted it out.
I saw those. Those were sweet.
They got the old. It's just simple green with a big white stripe across the middle, and the old cursive state, like the Magic Johnson cursive state. It's so gorgeous. It's simple. It's got the school colors. It's kind of throwbacky. I feel like that would have. But kids want the black and the browns, and I don't know. They've been wearing they wore the Script State hoops against Maryland this year. I know.
I guess we'd see those again on Sunday against Michigan.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But I feel like they don't do enough with the green and white simply as much as they could. I really like the football all green look when they added the green pants to that, and I think a white helmet would look great. The all white jersey look great. I think bronze. I know it's been since 2010, so we're kind of going on 5 years here, but it still feels like it's just there to be there. It doesn't really feel like a part of MSU 5 years later. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Getting back to the roller hockey too, the best part of those jerseys is the pants that have the strip down the side. That was nice too.
The roller hockey also has a Gruff Sparty jersey, which is something I think a lot of MSU fans would like to.
Yeah, as far as the hockey, I'd agree with you. I wish they would have gone with the green or white. I like to see them do too, like you were talking about the all green for football. I'd like to see hockey probably throw in some variation on the gloves too, because the best team that I think has the best jerseys is Boston University, and they always do the white jerseys with white gloves. So
that's something I thought.
I'd love to see the hockey team do that one time, throw a white jersey with some white gloves on. But
yeah, I did like that about the NHL All-Star jerseys. They were awful, but the fact that they were all uniform from like far away, the all black, the all white, I thought that looked pretty sharp. That could be something. But, bronze, black, they do what they do. MSU's only played Michigan once this year, right? Was that the GLI game?
Yep, they played them in the GLI with a pretty different Michigan roster, losing. I think they had 4 guys out to the World Juniors.
And now
they played
this
them
this Michigan team, they've been scoring like a mother.
it's
Feels like every game's like 6-4. It's crazy. Do you give MSU, what kind of shot do you give MSU on Friday and Saturday for what it's worth? Or Saturday and the next Saturday.
Yeah, I think right before Michigan got the offense going, the last team to really hold them down was MSU. It was a 2-1 final in the GLI. Obviously with a different roster for Michigan, but since then Michigan's been scoring a lot, but they haven't really been holding teams off either. I know last week they did shut out Wisconsin on Saturday, a 2-win Wisconsin team, but even the night before they were down 4-2 late into the second period, and then once they got 1 goal, you could just see Wisconsin was going to give it up and end up being, I think, a 7-4 game. So State, if anyone can hold Michigan's offense down, I think in the Big Ten right now, it's probably State. When they want to, they average 15 to 20 blocks a game. They're going to block shots. They're going to have Hildebrand in net. So if they can get it slowed down to being like a 3-2, 2-1 game, maybe. But if they try and turn it into a race, it's probably going to be a sweep for Michigan. But I'd probably say they have the best shot at the Joe, and then Michigan will probably be the better team at Soldier Field and probably end up with a split. So
this will break the tiebreaker between these teams. They are 1-1 against each other outdoors. They tied at Spartan Stadium, and Michigan won at Michigan Stadium, and MSU won at Comerica Park. So talk about overkill. This is the 4th outdoor game between these teams, but it is what it is. So I think that's going to about do it for us here. Thanks for checking us out, and make sure you're reading everything at theonlycolors.com. I am Chris Fanini on Twitter at Chris Fanini. We got Jeremy at Jeremy_doer. Joe is at Jobin #2 and KJ is KJ at TOC. So for everybody here, thanks for listening, and we will try to catch you guys next week. See you.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
yeah.